So this week, good morning, everybody. We are starting the Torah portion of Bo, and I'm going to sum up everything that happened till now, and then we will continue. And I'm also going to speak a little bit about the upcoming Yud Shvat, the 10th day of the Hebrew month of Shvat, which is next Wednesday. So it'll be a day before our class. And what happened on Yud Shvat is that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, passed away in 1950, and the Rebbe, the present Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the son-in-law, the second son-in-law of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, assumed leadership in 1951, a year later. So, good morning, everybody who just joined. So, why did it take a whole year? Because similar to the story with Moses at the burning bush, where God says to Moses, "You're going to take the people out of Egypt." Moses says, "Why me? I'm a simple shepherd. I don't speak clearly. I have a speech impediment. I have an older brother." The Rebbe felt that he did not want to be the public figure of world Jewry until the Rebbetzin, his wife, Chaim Mushka, the daughter of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, said to her husband, the Rebbe, "If you don't take over the leadership, all the work of my father will be lost. Who's going to continue my father's work?" So when the Rebbe heard that, he assumed leadership in 1951. And it wasn't easy because remember, 1950, 1951 was when all the Jews were coming to America. And there's the Holocaust, after the Holocaust. And the Rebbe inherited that generation of broken Jews, Jews who were demoralized, impoverished, didn't have a direction, where to go, what to do. So the Rebbe built up the entire Jewish nation. We'll talk more about that another time. So Yud Shvat is very significant in that the previous Rebbe passed away, and then our Rebbe took over the leadership. And I'll share one more tidbit because it's going to tie in very much with today's lesson that I found that I think is going to be just from reading it, I felt impacted. So the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, on the day he passed away, had prepared a deep Kabbalistic Hasidic discourse in memory of his grandmother. He was going to say it, and then he passed away. And it was called Basi Lagani, Come Into My Garden, which is a quote from the book of Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, written by King David. And the opening phrase is, God says to the Jewish people, Basi Lagani, come into my garden. My bride, my sister, to the place where I dwell. And so when the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe passed away, it became the tradition of the present Rebbe, our Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, to add on to this discourse every single year on the 10th day of Shvat. So it became many, many, many chapters based on this one passage. But to one little tidbit I want to share. God says to the Jewish people, to us, come into my garden. But let me ask you, look at the world today. Does it look like a garden to you? Does God's world look like the garden? It's a jungle out there. Look what's going on. The hate, the wars, the pain, the suffering, the demonstrations against our Jewish souls. Is this a garden? So one beautiful thing I saw, Basi Lagani, come into my garden. When you want to send someone on a mission, like in this week's Torah portion is called Bo. God says to Moses, come to Paro, Bo el Paro. Isn't God sending Moses to Paro to let my people go? Why does he say, come to Paro? Go to Paro. If I send you on an errand, I say, go and do this and this. I don't say, come and do this and this. You're not coming, you're going. So Rashi, the famous commentary, pipes in and says, God is telling Moses, you're petrified to go to Paro. It's scary. Come with me to Paro. I'll be with you. You're not going alone. I'm with you. So God says, if you come with me into the garden, if you bring godliness into your life, into your world, into the world, you will become a garden. The key is you have to bring God into the with you. The minute you leave God out of the equation, it's a jungle. The minute you bring God into the equation, it's a garden. God is with you.
But isn't
And
that in the afterlife, the garden?
you mean the Garden of Eden?
Like to just when we ascend to go to the garden and here is not the garden?
The world is called a garden.
Uh-huh.
The afterlife, in its own way, is also a garden. A garden could represent different stages and different realities for the soul. The world is a garden. As a matter of fact, there's a beautiful, beautiful insight that every time a woman immerses in the mikvah after her menstrual cycle, before she resumes intimacy with her husband, that is one moment that she goes back and recreates the world the way it was meant to be in the beginning of time when we were all in the Garden of Eden, when mankind was in the Garden of Eden, man and woman, Adam and Chava. There's a one moment in time when you can go back and have and feel what it was like to be in the Garden of Eden. The Kabbalah explains. That's how powerful the immersion is. So, and we're all seeking that Garden of Eden. We all want to be back to that world the way it was meant to be, peaceful, healthy, holy, light. The world the way it is now is not the way the world was meant to be. And the first step is bringing God back into your life, back into your world, back into and that's how you create a garden. And today's Torah portion is something fantastic. Today's Torah portion addresses one of the most pivotal things that plague every one of us. We have moments of darkness. We have moments of anxiety and stress and angst. We live in our past. We live in our trauma. This week's Torah portion, based on Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah and Hasidus, will give us the insight. How do you come out of darkness when you have those moments? And everybody has those times in their life when we fall and we feel like life is over, it's dark, it's painful, I'm depressed. It could be a deep depression or it could be a simple depression. You know, we all have days where we're out of it, days when we're feeling good, days when we're not feeling good. This week's Torah portion has such a magnificent insight that I'm going to share with you today. But before we get into that, I want to bring everyone up to snuff, to speed on the story of the day. So we spoke about the Jews came down to Egypt with Joseph, remember, because the brothers are reunited. That's how we ended up there. Now the new Paro came into being in the previous Torah portion, and he oppressed the Jews. He turned them into his slaves. God sends Moshe, who was the previous prince of Egypt. He says, and he runs away because he killed the Egyptian. Remember, he kills the Egyptian guard who was beating a Jew.
Mhm.
And as we discussed in one of our classes, how that's when Moses truly says, I am a Jew too, and identifies with his people. And he has to run away because he's now a fugitive. God sends him back when he's 80 years old. Comes to show you that till 80, you haven't really lived your life. You have what to look forward to. And now he's every week, there's every 3 weeks, every month there's a plague. Paro says, I'll let them go. He doesn't let them go. Every month in Donishtik, he changes his mind. This week, the Torah portion, God says to Moshe, Bo, the Torah portion, come to Paro. Come to Paro. And these are the final plagues, the plague of darkness. There'll be the plague of the death of the firstborn. And then God tells the Jews to have their first Passover Seder, right? To take a lamb, to roast it on the barbecue pit, and then you're going to leave Egypt once and for all. Okay? I'm going to fulfill my promise to you. I'm going to take you out of Egypt and bring you to the promised land. This is what's going on. There's a lot of drama here. Darkness, death of the firstborn. You can imagine what's going on. Then, as we say in Yiddish, mittendrin, in middle of everything, God calls Moses over and says, I want you to give the Jewish nation their first mitzvah. Their first mitzvah. Now, this is very perplexing. Is really now the time to teach the Jewish people their first mitzvah? When they're under such pressure, they're packing their suitcases, they're roasting the lamb for the Pesach Seder before they leave. They have to smear blood on their doorposts so that the angel of death passes over them. Is this the time to tell the people, okay, everybody, commercial break. There's a mitzvah you have to do today. What? Why now? Was epis? And what's the first mitzvah that God tells Moshe to teach the Jewish people? Let's have a little guessing game. What do you think the first mitzvah is? Let's everybody share your opinion. Don't be scared. If it's wrong, don't worry about it.
You shall have no other idol.
Very good. You should have no other idol. Maybe that's one of the first of the 10 commandments. Sarah, go ahead.
Did you go to Israel?
They should go to Israel. That's a mitzvah. Make aliyah. Anyone else want to share what they feel the first mitzvah is?
Be kind to your children. Teach your children.
Actually, Diane, I almost was going to teach that.
There?
Oh.
That in this Torah portion, we begin to see how the whole survival of the Jewish nation is based on educating our children. But I'm taking a different direction today. Hope it's okay. But that's very good. Go ahead, Sarah. What do you think?
Does it have something to do with time?
Yes. Yes.
The calendar?
Yes. Excellent. Go ahead.
It's Jane. Hi.
Hi, Jane. Go ahead. Tell us. Yes.
Because I think he
yeah, go ahead.
Because when you're a free person, then you have to take responsibility for your time.
Very good. Excellent. Sarah, what do you want to say? Go ahead.
Is it Rosh Chodesh?
Rosh Chodesh. Excellent. Exactly.
It is.
So what's the first mitzvah based on Jane and Sarah chiming in? God says to Moshe, establish Rosh Chodesh, the Jewish calendar, based on not on the solar system like the world does, the Gregorian, but on the lunar cycle, the moon. And as a matter of fact, that day that God tells Moshe, it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the day that begins the Exodus, the redemption from Egypt. It's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So based on what Jane said, is that why? Why is this the first mitzvah? And the reason is what Jane touched upon, is that when you're a slave, when you're imprisoned, you're not in control of your time. You're under the control of your master. It doesn't matter if it's morning, night, evening, vacation. No. Whatever your master tells you, you do. You're not in control of your own time. You're told when to sleep, when to eat. I don't know if you ever watched the movie with Shawshank Redemption with Morgan Freeman. And he's finally freed from prison. And he's given a job as a bagger in a supermarket. So he says to his manager, excuse me, may I go use the restroom? And the manager looks at him like he's crazy. You don't need my permission to use the restroom. But he's so indoctrinated of living years and years in prison, he doesn't know what it means to be in control of his own time. Yep. And that's what it is. When you're in prison, you are controlled by your masters, by those who imprison you. So the first mitzvah God gives Moshe to tell the Jewish people is establish a calendar. Establish the months of the year, the days of the week based on the lunar cycle, the Jewish calendar. Because now there's going to be a new paradigm. You are now not controlled by your masters, the slave masters, the Egyptians. You are now free. You are in control of your own time, your own destiny. One of the greatest gifts God now gives the Jewish nation. You are a free people. Now, just a brief overview. How does it work with the Jewish calendar in the olden days, before computers and calculations? How did they know when it was Rosh Chodesh? How did they know when to celebrate Pesach? Remember, if they miscalculated, they would be eating chametz on Pesach. They would be bread on Pesach if they didn't know when Pesach was. If they didn't know when the holiday of Shavuos was. If they didn't know when the holiday of Rosh Hashanah is. How did they know when everything is? Who knows how it worked in the olden days?
Calculations of the stars and the moon?
Yes, yes, but how did they know? What did they do? So, very simple. How would they do? Witnesses, credible witnesses, would testify every 29 days that they would start seeing the sliver of the moon emerge. They quickly made bonfires on top of the mountains, and they ran to Jerusalem to the rabbinical court, the Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin. They questioned them, and they said, okay, today is Rosh Chodesh. And sometimes it was 2 days Rosh Chodesh. Sometimes it's 1 day Rosh Chodesh. And that's how they knew. There was no fixed calendar. It was by the sighting of the moon. And then what happened later? There was a guy called Hillel Nicaea in the 5th century. He saw that the Jewish people were going to go into exile. They were going to be dispersed all over the world. So he, together with the Sanhedrin, made a calculation for all generations when Rosh Chodesh will be, when it's sanctified. And then now, with our computers and everything, we have the Jewish calendar. So this is how vital it was, Rosh Chodesh. Because miscalculation, you're celebrating on the wrong day. The holidays are on the wrong days. You're fasting on the wrong day. So that's how, go ahead. Yeah.
How is Rosh Chodesh a Jewish woman's holiday?
Brilliant. I'll tell you how. We'll go off on a little tangent though. So the Gregorian calendar, the world's calendar, is based on the solar system, on the sun. The Jewish calendar is based on the lunar cycle. By the way, that's why we have a Jewish leap year every few years, because the lunar calendar has to align with the solar calendar. And when it doesn't, Pesach comes out in the winter, and it says that Pesach has to be in the spring. So we add a month of Adar, which is the month of Purim. And we have a leap year certain years so that the alignment realigns itself. Okay. Why did God give the women Rosh Chodesh as our holiday? Does anybody know? It has to do with the sin of the golden calf.
Oh.
They didn't worship.
Very good. The women did not participate in the sin of the golden calf. Remember? The women go, the men will come and they say, honey, I need your jewelry. By the way, now gold is over $4,000 an ounce. Then I don't know how much gold was worth. Honey, I need your jewelry. Why? We need to melt it down to make a golden calf. Moshe disappeared. We have no one to represent us on earth with God. We need a golden calf. What did the women say? No, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. We don't worship idolatry. We just left idolatry. Why would we go back to idolatry? Why did the women stand up to their husbands? Forget about women's liberation, feminism in those days, it didn't exist. Besides that, in Jewish life, women are always equal, if not superior to their male counterparts. But what gave the women the chutzpah, the brilliance not to give their jewelry?
It was a commandment not to worship idols.
Right, but why didn't the men listen? Why were they so eager to give their jewelry? That's why now it's a custom. A lot of men don't wear jewelry. In Chabad, men don't wear jewelry. Why? Because the men gave their jewelry, the women didn't. So as a repentance, a lot of men in the Hasidic communities don't wear marriage band, don't wear jewelry, and so on. By the way, I want to say it's a tradition. It's not against the law for a man to wear jewelry. It's a tradition. It's a tradition. You're not sinning if you wear a marriage band, then you're a man. Don't worry. or Magen David. Yeah, you wanted to ask something?
I thought it had also perhaps something to do with the woman's menstrual cycle,
Say that again.
that it had something to do with a woman's menstrual cycle because they're full and ready to receive and then they wane. I thought that maybe that was one
Oh,
reason.
yes, that's the second part of the discussion. The second part of discussion I was explaining. So why didn't the women? So Hasidus Kabbalah explains that the feminine soul comes from Malchus, sovereignty. Every soul, the masculine soul, comes from different emanations of God. The feminine soul comes from the emanation of God called Malchus, sovereignty. And so, women, I'm giving this to you in a nutshell. I just gave a class on it for 2 hours. It's a very long discussion, but I'm giving it to you in a nutshell. Is that okay? And if you want one class, we can dedicate to this. So, because the feminine soul comes from the source of God called sovereignty, royalty, the women, Kabbalah explains, feel God from the inside out. It's similar. I'll give you a very practical example I used in my other class. Women, in the middle of the night, you wake up, your husband says, honey, why are you up? The baby's about to cry. The baby's not crying. The woman, but in a second later, wow,
Yeah.
we feel our children from the inside out. The husband will wake up when the baby cries. The woman will wake up before the baby cries. Not in every instant. I'm using it as a general example. Why? We feel from the inside out. God gave us our source that we feel godliness inside. And we don't have to be told God is the ruler of the universe. God creates every minute. We feel godliness. It's not external, it's internal. The masculine soul comes from external. That's why they wear yarmulkes, tzitzis, put on tefillin. They need the constant reaffirmation and connection to God. We don't need to be plugged in every second. We're automatically plugged in to our source. That's why men, yarmulke tzitzis, when they go out into the world to do a job, they constantly have to be reminded. Yarmulke tzitzis, tefillin, davening 3 times a day. They constantly need to be anchored in spirituality and godliness. Women were always anchored. Even when we're doing laundry, we're anchored. So when the men came and said, give us your jewelry, we need a golden calf, idolatry, the women didn't have to be told that's wrong. They felt it's wrong innately. So God gave a reward to the women, Rosh Chodesh. The holiday of Rosh Chodesh, women don't do laundry, they don't sew, we don't weave, we don't loom. But the question is, why Rosh Chodesh? Wouldn't you prefer a beautiful mansion, a nice, gorgeous diamond ring? Really, I could do without Rosh Chodesh as my holiday, if you ask me frankly. And the answer is because Rosh Chodesh is tied into the moon. And women are representative of the feminine energy is like the moon. We wax and we wane. At times, we're not able to conceive a child. We're having our menstrual cycle. You can't conceive. Then we go to the mikveh, we immerse, and now we ovulate and we can give birth to a child. Then we have a full moon. So just like the moon has its cycles, the feminine energy constantly changes. Men, they stay the same, right? They don't have the hormonal changes of the woman. It's a different energy and it complements each other. And also look at the difference. How does the moon get its light? From the sun? But the moon gives back an extraordinary light. How do we get our seed? From the masculine? We're intimate, we have the seed, and what do we give back? Another seed, we give back a child. So in so many ways, the women are symbolic of the energy of the moon. We receive, but we give back so much more. So actually, when I gave my class, somebody said there that, you're so condescending, you're making it sound really women are not superior. And I'm like, let me give you an example. Somebody gives you $100,000 and you give them back $10 million portfolio. You invested the money. You received the money, yeah, but what did you give back? So a receiver is not negative. It's a partnership. The sun gives the light to the moon, but the moon doesn't give back just a light. It gives back a more powerful light. We give back a child. The same thing. That's why God, in a nutshell, gave us Rosh Chodesh, because the moon is symbolic of the feminine energy and the feminine light and who we are and our role in this universe. We receive from the masculine, but what do we give back? A child, a life. You know, somebody gives you a loan $50, you give them back $50. What happens if somebody gives you $50 and you give them back $10,000? Are they inferior? Quite the contrary. They took your 50 and they quadrupled it. So that's how you look at the feminine energy.
Can I add something?
Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Is it appropriate to say something?
Well,
Okay.
of course, this is supposed to be a conversation.
Sometimes I'm asked to speak to younger people going to Israel, like on
Yeah.
Tag, right? And I think one of the things that people leave with is very simple, that this touches a lot of people. A very basic way is like in the evolution of when Hashem made everything, all living, breathing. You know, he starts with the smallest, the gnat, and goes up. And the hierarchy is, you know, women were created after men. Very simple. They are more evolved. This is why we're more connected. We don't need constant reminders. We don't need a minion. We don't need all these things. And I think that touches a lot of young people. It's the opposite of, you know, what feminist theory teaches women. And then the other thing is very simple as well, that men were created from earth, from dirt, and women were created from flesh. We're innately more superior, evolved, more superior, however
Beautiful.
connected. That's it.
Very nice. Beautiful. Want to just say one quick tidbit to that, which we taught in the first class. The truth is, when God created human being, it was a man and woman as one, both features, and then God put the person to sleep and made the female and the masculine separated. So the beginning of time, it wasn't that man, male, was created before female. They were created actually together as one entity, and then Kabbalah explains split into the male and female uh, attributes and physical characteristics and spiritual characteristics. And why did God do that? Just to reiterate, is because men and women are so different that if they weren't once one, like one soul, that's why it's called your soulmate, you can never get them back together again. If they hadn't initially been one, we're so different, it would never work. You know my joke. My husband always says, I know I married Miss Right, but I didn't know her first name was always. That's what my husband always tells me. Okay, so let's get back on track. Thank you, Sarah. That was beautiful. And so why is the first mitzvah calendar? Because remember, we discussed so many times that you could take slavery out of the person, but you can't take the person out of slavery. You could take the person out of slavery, but you can't take the slave mentality out of the person, right? So when God gives us the calendar, it's the first step in giving us the mental capacity to see ourselves as free people. You have to start seeing yourself as a free person, envisioning yourself as a free person. Just because you're freed from prison doesn't mean now, oh, you're going to see yourself as a free person. So the definition of exile is the calendar. You see yourself as a free person. Of redemption. The redemption consciousness is seeing yourself as a free person. The definition of exile is seeing yourself every day as a grunge. You wake up in the morning, nothing changes. You're put into shackles, you're put to work. You're given a piece of crust, you go back into work and back into your shackles, back into your prison. When you speak to people who went to prison or hostages, the worst is that there is nothing ever changes. the same misery every single day, the same pain every single day. There's no newness. There's no newness. What's Rosh Chodesh? What's a calendar? There's always renewal. There's always newness. There's always newness and there's always renewal. So exile is living in the past, living in past trauma, past pain. What happened yesterday still impacts you today. Living in redemption and Geula, the Mashiach consciousness, as we call it, the redemption consciousness, as every minute is renewal, is newness. Now, this is the question, the quintessential question. When I'm feeling trapped in my past, in my pain, in my depression, in my darkness, how do I get out of that mentality? How do I get out of the slave mentality, so to speak, where my yesterday defines my today? Now, that, by the way, I just want to clarify, doesn't mean that history doesn't repeat itself, or we should forget our past, forget the Holocaust, forget all the persecutions, forget October 7th. No, no, no. It means that's what you're living, that's defining you. It doesn't mean don't look at the future and don't look at the past. But if that's what defines you, you're in exile, you're in prison. What's redemption? What's the consciousness of Mashiach, of Geula, of redemption? That every minute you see a newness, a recreation of life. And I want to share with you a pasuk from this that explains it, that clarifies this. As we say, Hamachadesh betuvai bechol yom tavid ma'aseh bereishis, that God renews with goodness every day, tamid, constantly, ma'aseh bereishis, creation. So what does it mean, tamid, constantly? Every day is creation recreates itself, right? That's a common statement. Every day the world recreates itself. What does it mean, tamid? Constantly means every second the world recreates itself. Every second there's a renewal. It's even more powerful. So now, to sum up this point, how do you tap in to redemption energy? By connecting to divine energy, to God, and seeing every moment of your life is a renewal. Every second your life renews itself. There's a newness, like a child in a candy store. I want this candy, I want that candy, and they get so excited. We're like, okay, come on, choose already. What's the difference? A yellow lollipop, an orange, gummy. So if you can envision every minute of your life is a renewal, you're connected to divine energy. That's divine energy, that every second is a renewal. Then you can feel every second of your life an excitement, a newness. That's how you pull yourself out of darkness. If you look at your life as stagnant, this is how my life is. What am I going to do? Every day is the same. I live in the same house. I wake up to the same husband or wife, the same children, the same battered car, the same broken kitchen, the same schmata clothes. Then your life is taka stagnant. But if you could wake up in the morning and say to yourself, yesterday was pretty awful. I got nothing done. But I'm going to feel the divine energy. I'm going to connect to that. That's how you renew yourself. The trick is to connecting to divine energy. Gal Gadot, I'm not saying I'm a fan of hers, but she's an Israeli actress. She says, people said to her, she says, every morning I say Moda Ani. Remember we discussed it? That every morning you wake up, before you even wash your hands and get out of bed, you put your hand and go, Moda Ani lefanecha. Now, God, thank you for giving me back my soul. The minute you sit up on your bed, you're already connecting to the divine newness and energy. That's the secret to this Torah portion. Why do they need it now? Because now is when they really need it. They've been so stagnant, so oppressed, in such a dark place. Nothing changed day after day after day. God is giving them a new reality now. When you wake up in the morning. Sorry, you wanted to say something? Oh, I thought I heard you say. Okay. When you wake up in the morning or you go through your day and you say to yourself, every minute is an opportunity. Not every day is an opportunity. Every second is an opportunity for newness. You have a different reality. That's connecting to divine energy, changing your whole attitude, how you look at the world and how you look at your life. And it's a process. I always tell you, this is not the magic potion. You work on it. You work on it. You work on it. But I want to build on this a little bit. May I?
Yes.
Doesn't it say that I want to read the passage that there's nothing new under the sun? Doesn't it say that? Doesn't it say when God created the world that there was nothing new created? Everything was created in the 6 days of creation. So isn't this a contradiction? I want to read the pasuk. I'm looking where I wrote it down. Hold on, give me a second. Oh, here. Ein kol chodesh tachas hashemesh. It says in the Torah, there's nothing new under the sun, which means when God created the world in the 6 days, every future invention, revelation was created. It just had to be revealed in future generations. So if there's nothing new, doesn't this contradict what we just said? That every second is a renewal. Does anybody have an answer to this? Think of the wording. Tachas hashemesh. Under the sun, there's nothing new.
Oh,
But if you look at your life that you're above nature, you are connected to God, which is infinite and above everything, you're not contracted by that statement. If you look at yourself that, yeah, I was born in this world, I'm confined to this world, I'm confined to my past history, I'm confined to my present trauma, I'm confined to what's happening to me, and you look at yourself a mundane person stuck in nature, taka, you can't pull yourself out. But if you look at yourself that you're above nature, you're connected to divine, then your life changes because now you have infinite power. You've connected yourself to a very powerful source of energy. You're above nature. You know how people say the rules don't apply to me. The rules don't apply to you anymore, so to speak. Don't take the red light. The rules apply. But the rules don't apply. So when they say there's nothing new under the sun, taka. If you live by that reality, there is nothing new. And life is boring. There is no excitement. There is no renewal in your life. So what God was giving the Jews at this point, when he said, I want you to establish your own calendar, your own time, based on the moon, God was telling the Jewish people, I'm giving you the opportunity that every minute, if you connect to me, you will feel newness, you will feel excitement, you will be able to leave the moments of darkness in your life. And the Rebbe explains a very beautiful thing that we follow the lunar cycle. What's the lunar cycle? There are moments of darkness. When we think life is over, you don't see the moon. Then you see a little sliver of the moon.
mm-hmm.
And then the moon disappears altogether. For 2 days, you don't see the person. They're in a deep depression. But guess what? They finally come out of it. That's the power that we have.
Sorry.
No, please. I want people to say things. Go ahead.
It's called, when it's dark, it's called the new moon because new is coming. I like that.
I like that. I didn't hear that statement. Very good. Say that again.
I believe that the new moon is when it's in the dark phase, when you don't see it. So
Yeah. Very good. Exactly.
But connecting to all the mitzvahs and commandments and rituals and ways that help guide the human
Right.
towards that light is what you're saying also, is that that strength is those connections.
Exactly. The mitzvahs help us tap into the divine energy, the Mashiach consciousness, the redemption consciousness. But time is the catalyst for that we have our own time, so to speak, our own internal clock in a sense.
But to me, I keep on thinking of Shabbos coming.
Excellent. That's the next point that this discourse brings. Very good. So what's the difference, everybody, between Shabbos? Every single week we have Shabbos, but Rosh Chodesh fluctuates. Sometimes Rosh Chodesh is the 29th, sometimes it's the 30th, sometimes it's 2 days, right? So what's the difference between Shabbos that's steadfast every single week and Rosh Chodesh that fluctuates? And why is it like that? What's the difference? Who can share a little bit? Don't be afraid to guess.
We need the weekly review, the weekly push.
Shabbos, you're saying we need
Yeah,
Shabbos?
right. It needs to come more frequently.
So I'll tell you a funny story. My friend says to me, well, I'm celebrating Shabbos on Wednesday. This wasn't a joke. I'm like, why? She says, because we can't get together on Friday night, my family. So Wednesday, we decided to do Wednesday this week. So very good. Okay. I didn't want to say anything, but it's not Shabbos. So you could decide that Shabbos is Monday. Just like the calendar fluctuates, Shabbos fluctuates. You can't. Shabbos has been etched in time. Shabbos can never change. You could say it's Shabbos on Wednesday, but it's not Shabbos. It's not Shabbos.
But that
Go ahead. Sorry.
The renewal we get from Shabbos. We now start our new week. We ended the week. We make a ceremony of it.
Very good. Very good.
And Shabbos is to rest, and maybe Rosh Chodesh is a renewal. I don't know.
Very good. So what's the difference? Keep going. Go ahead. Share. I'm getting my notes together as you talk.
Shabbos is for men and women.
Yeah. And Rosh Chodesh is also Rosh Chodesh is the holiday for women, but the month is for men and women. It's not like it doesn't apply to the men. Rosh Chodesh is not a gift to them. But you can't say it's only for women, right?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Difference.
All right, keep going. What else? Anybody else want to share any differences?
One's a commandment and one, I don't know.
Yeah, one comes from Hashem and one is man-made. Man.
Excellent, Sarah. Exactly what it says in the discourse. Say it one more time, Sarah. So everyone hears?
Shabbat is from Hashem. It's one of the 10 commandments. Rosh Chodesh is human given.
Excellent. That's the key point. And to emphasize, how do you say when you want to build on what Sarah said, is look at the Kiddush, the benediction on the wine on Shabbos. Mekadesh HaShabbos. I sanctify the Shabbos. How do we say Kiddush on a holiday that's not Shabbos? Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. We are sanctifying the Jewish people and the time. Why don't you use the same thing? Isn't Yontif holy? But the difference is Shabbos, like Sarah said, is etched. Doesn't change. God said Shabbos is Saturday, the 7th day of the week. You can't change it. You can't decide it's Sunday. You can't decide it's Tuesday. It's always Saturday, the 7th day of the week. The month was instituted and cited by the Jews. When we saw the sliver, we knew it's Rosh Chodesh. Whether we use a computer now or not, it was set by mankind, by the Jewish nation. It is our energy that creates the calendar. Shabbos, God's energy. The calendar, our energy. It's a very, very fascinating thing. Very fascinating thing. So what does this mean? That Shabbos has a certain holiness. The angels come to the window, they look in and they say, beautiful Shabbos home, when they see the tablecloth and the candles and the challah. And if God forbid they don't say it, the negative angel says, perfect home, no Shabbos. So Shabbos has a certain kedusha and holiness that descends on the world, whether you like it or not. You could run around all Shabbos and say, it's not Shabbos, it's not Shabbos, I have things to do. It doesn't matter. The world still has the holiness and the energy of Shabbos. Rosh Chodesh is always during the week. I mean, sometimes Rosh Chodesh comes out on Shabbos, right? The first day of the Hebrew month could come out on a Shabbos. But normally Rosh Chodesh is during the week. It's the mundane. It is in the mundane that we can tap in to the divine energy. We go and seek out the energy and create newness within ourselves. It's precisely that Rosh Chodesh is during the week when we're not automatically given holiness. We have to seek that holiness. We have to seek that newness. We have to seek the divine connection. That's why God says to Moshe, HaChodesh hazeh lachem, to you. You got to create it. It requires our work. You can't wake up in the morning depressed and upset and angry and expect change. Wake up depressed, angry, upset, traumatized, but then say, Moda ani lefanecha, I'm going to now tap into the divine energy and feel newness and get out of it. Shema Yisrael, Hear O Israel, Shem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So Shabbos, whether you like it or not, the holiness descends. Just avail yourself of it. Rosh Chodesh requires our efforts. It's a weekday. It's a regular day. Nothing happened unless you make it happen. Everybody understand the difference?
Yeah.
It's also, you got to mull it over a little bit. Even I'm digesting it now a little bit, how it transpires in our lives. And now there's another very interesting tidbit. I hope you'll enjoy it. So it's funny that the Medrash tells us, the commentaries tell us that Moshe said to God, I don't understand. I don't understand. How do you establish Rosh Chodesh? How do you do it? Because remember, there was a process. Witnesses saw the sliver of the moon. They quickly reported it to the Sanhedrin, to the rabbinical courts, and the rabbinical courts questioned them a little bit, and then 2 witnesses, and then they established Rosh Chodesh. So Moshe says to God, okay, I understand what you told me, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to do. Now, Moshe was brilliant. He taught the whole Torah to the Jewish people. He studied it from God later on, right? This is before the giving of the Torah. He didn't know astrology, you could say. Maybe he didn't know astrology. Not everybody's a math genius or astrologist, right? You could say he didn't understand astrology. But that's not what the Torah is telling us. He didn't understand it. When you read it, you could leave yourself at this, like I always tell you, you could just read the commentary and just be happy with the answer. Yeah, Moshe didn't understand. He had a literal brain. He was more into arts and literature, not so much into math and astrology. So God explained it to him. Asks Rashi, how did God show it to him? God pointed and said, this is the way it works. God only spoke to Moses during the day. How did God show him when you can only see the sliver at nightfall, right? So how did God show him? Rashi says it doesn't make sense that God showed it to him. So Rashi explains that God waited till the sun was setting. It was getting dark. It was still semi-light, but getting dark. And then God showed him. God pointed it out. You see the sliver? That's how Rosh Chodesh works. But Kabbalah Hasidics explains it even deeper. It's not that Moses didn't understand intellectually how it works. That when you see the sliver, you know that's going to be Rosh Chodesh, right? 29 days since the last month. He didn't understand. How could this even exist? How could you have darkness and light? Because Moses existed, the Kabbalah explains, as the sun. He was called the sun. He was in perpetual connection to God. He never felt darkness in his life. He was called the sun because he only saw the divine in everything. He couldn't relate to the concept of people feeling dark, depressed, disconnected from God. He felt God every single minute second of his life. So he didn't understand how this could exist. So God had to show him darkness and say, yeah, you might be perpetually connected to me, but you know what? There's 6 million other Jews who don't feel like you are. They're not Moseses, they're Freidas. They have moments of depression and darkness, and they wake up in the morning and like, I don't want to get out of bed today. No moda'ani for me. The regular Jew is not like you, Moses. You're not, you're a Rebbe, you're a prophet. So Moses was called the sun. The Jewish people are called the moon because we're regular people. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. So that's what the Torah is saying. God had to show Moshe, you know what, Moshe? You exist in the divine energy, but not everybody's like you. So let me tell you how this works. Let me explain to you how this works. See the difference here? So Moshe was called the sun, and his successor, Joshua, was called the moon. It is the moon that brings the Jewish people into Israel, not Moshe. A different reality. Moshe was the sun. He couldn't go into Israel with the Jewish people. The Jewish people had to go in with Joshua. It's a different discussion, but it says Joshua was the moon. That's the reality. Moshe was the sun. They needed a moon. They needed to go in that way. It's hard to understand. I don't understand it yet. That's why I'm not elaborating it. I'm just sharing. So when Moshe says, God, I don't know what you're talking about. How do you establish it? It's not that he didn't understand astrology. He didn't understand how could people be in darkness? How could you be disconnected from God? But the reality is we are. Most of the time, it's very hard. So now let's sum it all up. Let's bring it all together. Let's bring it all together here. So basically, you know, there's the Newton physics and there's the quantum physics. So the Torah follows the quantum physics. Most people follow Newton physics. What's Newton physics? That if you want to know facts, look at the past, and that determines the present, and the present determines the future. Quantum physics is more like aligned with what Torah is. You can't allow trauma to define your present. What defines your presence is flexible. What happens yesterday doesn't determine today and cause what will happen tomorrow. We determine today what will be today. That's Torah. That's Chassidus. How you view yourself every second of your life, connecting to God, connecting to newness every second, that's how your day is determined. Not by what happened in the past. I'm sorry. I went through a terrible childhood. My parents are Holocaust survivors. How do you expect me to change? And I could tell you in the future it's going to be the same. My children are going to be the same way. You have already determined your prison life sentence. But if you follow quantum physics, so every second you're renewing yourself, you're connecting to divine, and you don't allow anything to schlep you back, that determines your life. So when, in conclusion, when you have moments of darkness, you're stuck in the past, you're depressed, you don't know where to go, you don't have self-awareness. I mean, 101 things that we could think about. Realize, how do you get yourself out of it? Is connecting to divine energy. What's the divine energy? That you're not stuck. Every second is renewal. Every second is newness. Every second can be excitement. So if you connect yourself to divine energy, you're never stuck because divine energy is renewal. Every second, the world recreates itself. If God were to leave the world would collapse. The fact that the world exists is because God is here every millisecond. It's not like when you bake a pie and you leave it on the counter, it stays. It doesn't disintegrate into its original ingredients. Because the pie was created from sugar and flour and water and raisins and chocolate chips and apple pie, whatever. The world was created from nothingness. So if God were to step back, it would resort to nothingness. The fact that God stays here, which means the world is recreated every single second, gives us the ability to tap into that energy, provided we're connected to the divine. As long as you constantly see yourself as an extension of divine energy, you're okay. And you have to work on it. You have to work on it. And that's why it's the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people. Because really, it's the secret of your survival. The minute you see yourself as nothingness, stuck, you can't get out of exile. You can't get out of Gullus. And that's what the Rebbe has been teaching all the years, that our generation has to have the Mashiach consciousness, the redemption mentality. The redemption mentality is that you are never stuck. You're always able to get out of the quicksand. Now, no one is going to have every single day like Moses. We're all going to be sunny, 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 sunshine. You have to be a Moses. But we all have the ability to connect. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. What does divine energy mean? Like Debbie said, mitzvahs. You're lighting Shabbos candles. You're giving tzedakah. You're saying a little prayer. You're doing something for someone else. You're visiting the sick. When you have to use the mikveh, use the mikveh. Eating kosher, putting a mezuzah on your door, having holy books in your house, studying a little Torah. 1,000,001 mitzvahs you could do. Easy ones, hard ones, simple ones. But that's what it means to have the redemption consciousness. You're looking at the world as a constant renewal every single second. Every single second. Does anybody want to add anything, say anything, question? Go ahead. We need to mull it over a little bit, It's a hard thing to understand.
We should broadcast this to the entire world today.
Yeah.
Redemption and renewal.
So and also why are we the lunar cycle? Shouldn't we have been the sun like Moshe, right? So I just thought of that is because reality is we're like the moon. We're not going to shine bright every single day. That's humanity. Humans, God created us as human beings, which means we wax and we wane. Yep. Yeah. Sometimes you see a sliver of us. Sometimes we're hidden, and sometimes we're the full moon. Happy, rosy, content. You know exactly what you're doing. You know your trajectory of life. You know where you've been, where you could be. Sometimes, you wake up in the morning, I know exactly what I got to do. And then sometimes I wake up and I'm like, where am I today? What is going on in my life? Why did I do that? And why did I do that? I should shoot myself. I don't know if you could relate to that. That's how I feel sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And
I have two things to add, if you can hear me. I have a baby here. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. By the way, Sarah is a new mother. Baruch Hashem, Mazel Tov.
Mazel Tov.
Beautiful.
Little Shoshana.
Mazel tov.
Oh, Mazel Tov.
Yeah, sorry about my camera situation here.
Go ahead. Go share with us, Sarah. I love it.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
No, just really simple. These are not deep thoughts. One is everything that you mentioned earlier, like that's distracting or depressing.
Yeah.
That you can wake up and see the glass half empty. I think the very basic question is, what's preventing me from meeting my potential? And
Very good.
I think that's the essence of much of what we discussed today. And I don't have an answer, but that is different for everybody.
Saying, what's the answer? No.
I think the Second thing that I thought about in our discussion today is the 7 day. Everyone is claiming in modern times that there's no creator. That's like very, very posh opinion. It's not the first time in history this has happened.
Right.
Why do they keep the 7 days, 7 days of the week? And we went through different calendars in the world that were not the 7 days, and none of them lasted. Why do we have the seven? Why have we established a 7 day calendar? They kept it from the Jews. So if there's no God, get rid of the 7 day calendar. Go use something else.
Very good.
Didn't the hostages try to keep Shabbos? They
Yeah.
tried the calendar.
Yes.
It's remarkable
Yeah.
what they had to go through, and they still tried.
Yeah. I want to share a story about the Alter Rebbe. In conclusion, the Alter Rebbe was Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Ladi, the first Chabad Rebbe, and he wrote the Tanya, which is the Kabbalah primer of Jewish mysticism, Hasidus. So there's a story, the Rebbe, Alter Rebbe, had a clock on his desk. He left his office, and there was a fellow in his room, one of his disciples. And the Alter Rebbe noticed that something was changed on his clock, like the time was adjusted. So he says to the fellow, "Did you adjust my clock?" He said, "Yeah, Rebbe, I was in the big city and I got myself the newest clock. It keeps time perfectly. So I wanted to make sure your clock is aligned with my new clock." So the Alter Rebbe said, "Thank you very much, but I want you to understand that my clock is configured a little differently. It says that every hour, a different part of God's name, energy comes forth. Yud Ke Vav Ke, Adonai, Hashem's name. So every hour has a different energy of God's energy in the world is revealed. And my clock follows that energy." In other words, my time is exact based on the godly energy. He tells this chassid, he tells this clock guy.
And the
So he
guy,
said, the Kabbalah explains. And then another cute story with Alter Rebbe, when he's put into prison, he was put into prison because he sent money to Israel to help the Jews in Israel. The Jewish people in Israel were suffering from poverty. So he would collect money in Russia and send it to Israel. So the Russian government arrested him because he's a revolutionary. He's funding terrorist organizations in Israel. So the story repeats itself, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So they put him in prison. They put him in prison. They made sure that the prison doesn't have any windows. So prisoners also, they get very disoriented, like solitary confinement. Is it morning? Is it day? Is it night? It makes people crazy. So the minister was sent to interrogate the Alter Rebbe to see, is he a revolutionary or he's just a rabbi? So the minister comes in and the Rebbe stands up, and the Alter Rebbe, and he says, "Good morning, minister." He says, "How did you know it was morning?" He said, "Because every hour there's a godly energy that recreates itself." The Alter Rebbe used to keep time based on the godly energy, like Moshe. He didn't need a window to give him light. He was light. So the minister had a whole conversation with the Alter Rebbe, but he realized this Rebbe is no revolutionary. He's a very special person. And also, one more cute thing, the minister, he says, "Good morning, minister." He says, "How did you know I was a minister?" The minister didn't want the Alter Rebbe to know that he was from the elite, so he dressed himself in peasant clothes. So he says to the Alter Rebbe, "By the way, how did you know I was a minister?" So the Alter Rebbe says to him, a quoting from Kabbalah, that the kingly reflection in the heavens is reflected down on earth. That when someone has a godly energy, an energy of sovereignty, it's not only what you see on earth, it's also a reflection of the divine. So Alter Rebbe was able to see the divine light he saw in the human light. So he was able to see this guy was a minister, the way he conducted himself. He didn't need the guy to be dressed up like a minister. The minute he walked in, Alter Rebbe knew he was a minister. Why? Because the divine light is a reflection of the physical light. If you understand one of the concepts in Kabbalah, that everything in the world has a divine, how do you call when someone looks like someone else? A double dagger. how do you, when you look like exactly like someone else, double dank or
Lookalike.
what?
Lookalike. A lookalike?
A lookalike, but there's a word for it, a funny word. But that's what it is, that everything on earth has a divine spiritual reflection in the heavens. So, Debbie, you have a double in heaven. I have a double. Diane, Sarah, Jane, Ariel, everyone has a spiritual representation. So that's how it is. So the Alter Rebbe, who saw everything in godly dimensions, knew right away this is a minister. This is not a regular guy. So
How he
that's how.
carried himself,
And
how he spoke, I'm sure. Yeah.
so that's again what it means to live in redemption consciousness. That you don't see the world as the way it is. Tachas Hashemish, we're living under the sun, and everything else defines my mood, my feelings, my who I am. Start living above the sun. Nothing can define me. I can define myself based on my relationship to God, divine energy. We have to start seeing ourselves directly connected to the light, to the sun, to God. Once you see yourself like that, I mean to the moon really, but whatever, the sun, the moon, your whole life changes. Because like I always say with the story of Joseph, were you sent or were you sold? Am I a victim or am I a victor? Do I control myself or does everything around me control me? That's like my line. Because I now took that on as my mantra. Whenever something happens and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, no, 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 I was sent. I wasn't sold.
You come, not go, right?
I was in Florida for a few days because my daughter, remember, my daughter had a baby. So I had given a talk there last year. So one girl comes over to me, Shabbos, and she says, Freida, I was sent, not sold. Because I had used that line. I was trying to
Very
teach
nice.
them that how the Rebbe changed how we look at life. So she says, Freida, we're all walking around saying we were sent, not sold. I'm like, then I accomplished my mission if
Love
that's
it.
what you're saying.
Great.
So again, so that's what happens. So when you're feeling down and out, first of all, tell yourself you're normal. But then tell yourself also, guess what? I can renew myself every single minute of my life. It's up to me. Nothing can define me. Nothing can make me what I'm not. I think this is what the hostages knew. Because one hostage said, I never celebrated Yom Kippur. I never connected to Yom Kippur. I never fasted Yom Kippur. The first time I fasted was when I was a hostage in those tunnels. And I always say this. You think God would have punished him or said anything if he would have eaten that piece of rotten pita that they gave him on Yom Kippur? It's B'kuach Nefesh. He was dying of hunger. Of course he was allowed to eat. He's a prisoner. But he fasted on Yom Kippur even when he had morsels, crumbs, because he felt connected to God at that moment. And that's what got him out. The mental state. The mental state is what got them out. God saved them, but the mental state. One guy said he never kept Shabbos. One of the girls said, I never kept Shabbos. I never grew up with Shabbos. As a hostage, they said, how did you keep Shabbos? She says, I was forced to cook and I refused to cook. She was in one of the houses initially. I refused to cook for my captors. I said, I don't cook on Shabbos. I'm Shomer Shabbos, she says. She became Shomer Shabbos, which means keeping the Shabbos. I mean, these are miracles. These are miracles. This is what it means connecting to divine energy. This is what it means. Sarah, go ahead. You want to say something?
Sorry, I'm trying to forgive
Oh,
my phone. Yeah, I can add that there's an organization in Israel that um you can call if you want to keep Shabbat, if you want to begin keeping Shabbat and you don't know where to start, if you're not from, you're not Haredi, you're not born into this, whatever the case may be. And they bring you the essentials, how to, things that cover your light switches, hot water, blech to put the food on. And they're getting more calls since October 7th in recent times. In the past 2 months, they're getting like 200 calls a week of people who want to keep Shabbat. It's never happened in the state of Israel in history of this amount of secular people deciding, you know what, I'm going to keep Shabbat.
that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Yeah, unfortunately, it takes an October 7th at times. It should not have to take an October 7th. Listen, listen, it should be a catalyst for goodness, a catalyst for light. That's by who Jews are, by the way. That's what we do. You know, we build. When there's destruction, we build. When there's darkness, we light. That's what we do. That's what Jewish people do. And it doesn't matter how you were brought up, how you call yourself religious, not religious. Like you know, I don't believe in titles. I don't believe in titling people. A Jew is a Jew is a Jew, and that's who we are. So I want to wish everybody a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos. 18 minutes before sunset. Not today, tomorrow. Tomorrow night. Give a little tzedakah, add a little more light, do another mitzvah. And next Thursday, same time, same place for our women's wisdom class. Because I said to myself, it's more than a Torah class. It's the women's wisdom. And thank you all for sharing. Sarah, I loved what you shared about Adam and Chava. Beautiful, beautiful. So meaningful. I remember reading it once, how Adam came from the earth and Chava came from the rib. So the women come from Ohio. So it's beautifully said. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Sarah, you're
Freida.
going to teach next class? And all of you for sharing your wisdom. All right. Good.